been a minute since one of the cats interrupted one of my videos. Hello, this is Sarah with soiledplant and welcome back to my channel. It is spooky season. Halloween is right around the corner. It's actually this next weekend and I have dressed for the occasion. But today I'd like to talk about my forgotten houseplants. My forgotten houseplants aren't necessarily plants that I've forgotten about, but they're definitely plants that I don't feature super often on this channel and figured they deserved a little bit of the spotlight. And as much as I love you, it's going to be hard to show off plants while you're sitting on my lap. Now the first plant I'd like to talk about is one that I hauled and then never talked about again. And it's the only peperomia that I have, and I have it right over here. But this is my little peperomia. It's got some old leaves on the outside, but it definitely has some new ones growing. So I might just prune this while I sit here. That is my Peperomia peppermill. This is actually my first and only peperomia. I mean, I think I technically have another one in a terrarium, but I don't really count it if it's not like a separate plant. And this one, I've managed to keep it alive, so maybe that's a sign that I should get more peperomia. A lot of them look like this and have like little crinkly edges. A lot of them have a very unique look, and this one is no different. Now I'm going to show you one of these leaves that I pulled off. It's a little lighter than the leaves that are on this plant. It's definitely a bit lighter. So I want you to see the pattern on this. It definitely has that peperomia quality to it, but what I love about this one is that it's got the dark outsides and it's got that sort of like lighter green look on the inside. But the thing that I fell in love with this plant over is when it gets good light and when it's nice and dark, it kind of glistens in the light and it kind of has a sheen to it. You are definitely not going to be able to see it under all these artificial lights, but it definitely has a glisteny, glowy quality about it, and I absolutely love this plant. So I'll take it out of its outer pot just so you can get a good look at it, so you can see it kind of in all of its glory. The one thing that I was worried about with peperomias was, first of all, killing it, but second of all, I was worried about its growth pattern, that I wasn't going to be able to sustain it and that it was going to get leggy and weird, and this one's gotten a little bit leggy, but it's certainly growing new growth, nice and compact in the center. All of the new growth in here has these like bright pink stems, and all the ones that are kind of fading have that lime green stem. So you can tell which ones are like the brand new ones, which are all right in the center, nice and compact, nice and, you know, clustered in the center. And then all these older ones are kind of starting to droop. It's giving me like Pilea peperomoides vibes a little bit, but I might just pull the old ones off. But the one thing I do really like about this peperomia, I'm not sure if all peperomias do this, but the little tiny growth that comes in is uber tiny and just teeny tiny little leaves. And then they kind of like get bigger and grow and turn into like the stunners that are kind of like the big leaves. If I see another peperomia that gives me kind of like the same warm fuzzy feeling I get when I look at this one, I'll definitely pick one up now that I've proven that, you know, I can keep these alive for at least a year, you know, at least a season. And we'll see how it does in winter. I've got it in my south-facing window, which is right over here, and it seems to love it. I water these about the same amount as my Hoya, so I usually wait for it to dry all the way out before I go back in and water. I've also heard these tend to do better in the winter than in the summertime, so we'll see if that's true or not, if it holds true, but for now, love this plant, and it's definitely one I don't talk about nearly enough. The next plant I want to talk about is my Philodendron atabapoense. This one doesn't photograph great, which is part of the reason why it's never made a favorites list, but it's also doing great and it grows really fast, so it's never been on my disappointing plants list. One of the reasons this is a little gangly is because the internodal spacing is pretty large. It doesn't get ideal light. The other reason it's a little gangly is because I've taken a bunch of cuttings of this plant. I've gifted it to people. I've sold a few cuttings here or there. So that's why you kind of, there's like decent sized leaf and then little leaf, little stunted, not even fully elongated leaf. And then they slowly get bigger. And I've got another like good size one up here. But the top, which you can't even see, the top of this one looks like that. So this growth isn't the best, and the internodal spacing is significant. So one thing I plan on doing probably in the spring because we're well into fall and I've taken enough late stage cuttings that I probably shouldn't have taken. So at this point, I'm going to try and be a good plant parent and not make any more propagations until spring, March time frame, something like that, end of winter. One thing I do plan to do in the spring is to cut this one back. It roots really, really fast. You can root it in water, you can root it in moss, root it in soil, really. I think it would do just fine. I've never tried rooting it in soil. I just might this go around. But what I plan to do is basically cut all of these, keep the leaves on it, root it in water, and basically repot this entire plant so that even if the internodal spacing is a little wonky, it's going to be a nice full plant. I'm not sure if demand for this plant has gone up or down. I don't see them sold super often. And when I have tried to sell like just one leaf rooted leaf cuttings, they do sell, but I don't know if that's because I'm pricing them really well. Yeah, so I don't know if demand for these is up or down. So I'll make a bunch of cuttings, I'll put some of them into a plant, and then if there's any demand for them on the internet, I'll try and sell them on Facebook or something. But, you know, I have no intention of like making a profit off of this plant. Because technically I already have. I sold 2 cuttings and basically that paid for what I spent for the entire plant. This plant is actually the one that's on my very first YouTube video, which is on my channel, which is my unboxing of my Green Spaces ID order. And this is from that order. You can see kind of what the plant started out as. I still technically have 2 of the original 3 leaves, which is this one and this one, but they are a little sad looking and probably desperately want to die, but I refuse to take them off because honestly they're the biggest leaves I have, so I do kind of want to keep it. It's one of the few plants I actually have on a moss pole because honestly I don't like moss poles that much. They don't stay wet ever, and every time I water this plant I basically water the moss pole and then whatever gets to the soil gets to the soil, because it definitely does, but I feel like it stays moist for like 5 seconds and then dries out. So this might be a plant that I take off of the moss pole and put it on something else, just because I don't know if it does anything. The aerial roots definitely love it, and the aerial roots get so long, so I'm just gonna kind of stick them in the pot, so at least they're getting a little bit of water, you know, make them useful. Very leggy, very funny looking Philodendron atabapoense. The next plant I'd like to talk about, which I haven't talked about in a minute and definitely needs a water, is my Philodendron lemon lime. I've made no secret of my love for heartleaf philodendrons. I love them all. I've got this one in my bathroom. My bathroom now is much less impressive than my bathroom at my old place. But I do have this one near a south-facing window. It just doesn't get quite as much light as it did before, and definitely not as much indirect light as it did before. If you remember this plant, I had like a super long tendril of this plant, and I ended up putting that into a new plant and then just selling it because honestly, this thing grows so fast. This whole section was grown in probably, I don't know, a couple of months, maybe 4 months. And then this side is also doing pretty well. So it's already trailing again, even though I cut off its biggest sort of tail, and it's doing super well. These big ol' huge ones are from the original plant and definitely something that like was part of the propagation for this plant. If memory serves me correctly, this is a plant that I bought from Gabriella's Plants, and it came and it was great and no complaints, and so that's why these leaves are huge. It came from like a big greenhouse and they propagated it and sold it. But the leaves that I've been getting are decent size, you know, they're not huge, but I definitely had like a couple of little tiny bitty ones, and then they have kind of sort of regained the size that they normally have. I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever that this is going to do really well. But it hasn't been fussing much. It's not like super impressing me with like insane, you know, growth spurts or whatever. It's not in the most attractive location in my house, so it doesn't get nearly as much attention as it should. It needs some leaf cleaning. I might do that before I put it back, but I love this plant and it doesn't get nearly enough attention for me. That is for sure. So that's its longest tendril right now, is kind of wrapped up. But this is a super happy plant. Heartleaf philodendrons are hard to make upset, so That's why they're such great houseplants and why they do so well in pretty much any environment you put it in. It's most likely going to do really well. Sticking to the heartleaf philodendron train, I am going to show you this. This is one of those silver stripe. Is it a silver stripe? Is it a cream splash? It was sold to me as a cream splash, so I'll call it that for this video, but it could very well be a silver stripe. Honestly, I can't tell the difference really. But this is my sort of mother plant of my cream splash. I did feature this once in a disappointing plant video, and that was just because I couldn't get the lighting correct to get the stripes complete. And I do still have a lot of those leaves that do not have a ton of that stripingness in there. It does have the stripe, and it's definitely creamier and not Brazil-like. So it still has those sort of trademark stripes, but it's just a little bit less. And with a lot of the newer growth, it is getting a little bit better. I'm giving it Western light now, but it is also, you know, winter. But they're getting a little bit better, you know, not too bad. On this side, this tendril is doing amazing. Pretty much all of the leaves on this one are going like ham over here and just like doing the thing that the whole plant should honestly be doing, which is making really, really lovely, creamy yellow. Ooh, sorry. Like these are the leaves that the whole plant should be like, throwing a lot of that white and creamy yellow. Some of these really big ones are from the original plant that I did not grow myself. All the little ones are ones that I grew. But yeah, there's just one little stalk that's not doing great, but I'm gonna keep working with it. I will say I technically have a second plant because I took some cuttings from this one and tried to root it. I wanted to encourage more of the stripiness in this plant, in the mother plant. So I actually took cuttings, and you can also see that there's like little roots coming out the bottom. So it's a healthy plant for sure. It's just not throwing quite as much of that cream variegation. So I ended up taking some cuttings of that to hopefully encourage the mother plant to like get more creamy. And this is what the cuttings have done. I actually repotted this recently because I had a couple of cuttings, like I mixed it in with some Brazil on accident. So I split all that up and fixed it. So this is more cream splash. I have this one to see if it does any better. These three leaves down here are all from one plant, so you can see how there's hardly any variegation on that plant. But on this one, it's doing a lot better. It actually threw an entirely white leaf for the, you know, with like the tiniest little sliver of green just on this end. You can kind of see the sliver of green. But it hasn't died on me yet. I'm just gonna let it live. But all of the other leaves on that side of the plant are doing a lot better and throwing the kind of color that you would expect from a cream splash silver stripe situation. So technically I have two plants. I definitely would be able to take more cuttings of this. Once again, in the spring, I am going to resist the urge to cut this up because I really want to cut it up. Because things like this make me angry and I would like to fix it. And I don't like having my internodal spacing that big. I want to fix it, you know? And I'm gonna have to wait to fix it until, you know, the plant is in a better headspace, as it were. It needs that summer, it needs that spring, it needs all that extra light to recuperate. And I've definitely got it in a western window, but it's all natural light. So now that the winter is here, it is just going to be in hibernation mode, and I just have to accept that. Now, for the next plant, I could pretty much call out pretty much anything on this shelf over here. I don't really talk about the plants on this shelf very often, so I want to take this opportunity, not necessarily to focus on everything on this shelf because that would take too long, but I want to talk about the only Aglaonemas I have. I have two Aglaonemas. I have this one right here, which I will pull out for you in a second, but the other one I have is my red Siam. At least I've always called it red Siam. I bought it from, you know, a Lowe's, Home Depot back in the day, long before I had a YouTube channel. And it struggled pretty much from the second I brought it home. It wasn't happy. It used to be a big plant. It used to be, you know, this size of a plant, you know, big bushy plant, and it is this big now. I thought it was the soil, so I actually repotted it. And I think the last time you really got a highlight of this plant was when I did a repotting. God, forever ago. It's got like 200 views on it. Nobody's seen that poor video. But it featured this plant, and I, was trying to basically rehab it because it was struggling, and I assumed it was because the soil was bad or if there was a cage around the root structure. Nothing like that. It seemed fine, but I did put it in my root mix and it's survived. So if you have any advice for Aglaonemas, I'm all ears. My other one seems to be doing okay, so maybe it's just a problem with this one and it just was unhappy with me. But this is what I've been calling a red Siam. I don't have a ton of pink plants, and honestly, without my Aglaonema or Syngonium, I probably would have 0 pink plants. There's maroons and there's like reds and stuff, but there's not a ton of like pink, like this color pink. I don't have a ton of that in my collection, so I'm certainly very glad I have it, and it is surviving. I've got basically 2 plants of it. It keeps producing new leaves, but I don't know, it just produces leaves very, very slowly. But I do have it on basically the top, like the shelf that's right above my hand here that I'm pointing to. I have it like right there, and then the window is right there. So I've got it maybe 4 feet from a south-facing window, and it definitely likes it better there than where I had it at my old place. So I think we're definitely scheduled for some improvement. It's leaning a little bit to the light, so I will be flipping it around and hopefully it'll even itself out. But that is my Aglaonema red Siam, at least what I call a red Siam. I have to be very careful pulling that out. It's got a lot of delicate plants around it. But yeah, this is my other Aglaonema, which was struggling for a little bit. I was losing a lot of leaves, but I think I've hit my stride with this one. And I think it honestly just comes to giving it better light and watering it more often. Go figure. Like, that's the solution to like 90% of plants' problems. Is like, are you giving it enough light? How's the water? As soon as you figure those out, 9 times out of 10, your plant's gonna get better. But yeah, this plant I got, and I was inspired to get this plant because I saw it on Plantarina's channel, and it is the Aglaonema Sparkling Sarah. Like any plant named Sarah, I'm gonna have to pick up. I don't make the rules, that's just what I gotta do. And I also really liked it because it had those nice pale pink stems that a lot of Aglaonema have, but even compared to the red Siam that I showed you, these ones are much, much paler pink, and I like the pattern on it. I like the little splashing, the little dots. Some of the older leaves have a lot more color to them than some of the newer ones, but you know what? I'm okay with that. I feel like it's a nice mix of like some with more green and some with more pink. And so I think it kind of evens itself out, especially with summer light versus now. I'm sure that has something to do with it as well. I've taken it out of its cover pot so you can get a look at the stems. Nice and healthy, but also, I think there's really only 2 plants in here maybe, but it's branched off into a whole bunch of different ones. I think these are all technically connected at the base, but I'm not honestly. I need to look up more about Aglaonema and how they grow, because I've never tried to propagate an Aglaonema. I don't even know how you do it, if it's by separation like Calatheas or if you can chop the top off. I'm not sure. Yeah, this might be more like Alocasias or Calatheas where you have to separate it out to get new plants. But I love that it kind of like fixed itself, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't do much of anything to get this plant happy again. It might have been acclimating to my house, it maybe just likes this placement better, I don't know. But she definitely decided to live, and I did very little to get her to do better. But I'm super glad she's doing better, and she doesn't get nearly as much attention as she should. I try to stay on top of watering. I do feel like in the beginning when I had this, it was just extremely thirsty and would just soak up water really fast. So I would go to water this in my normal routine, in my normal schedule or whatever, and then it would be bone dry and losing 3 leaves. And I was like, oh no, I'm killing this thing because I'm not watering it enough. I'm going to kill this poor plant. I think I'm watering it a little bit more, but I feel like I'm not. I don't know. I try to check it a little more often than I normally do, but I couldn't even tell you if I'm watering it more often. I'm probably not. It probably got used to me rather than me getting used to it. You know what I mean? I hope you enjoyed seeing some of these plants that I really don't talk about super often, that I don't highlight on my channel nearly enough. There's so many plants I have that I don't talk about nearly enough. and I really want to, so I might do another one of these in a couple months, who knows. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, comment down below, subscribe if you want to see more. I post videos on Thursdays, and I will catch you next time. Bye! No, it's cool. It's not like I have anything I need to be doing right now. Can I help you? Yeah, don't worry, buddy. I got all the time in the world.